Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
This is a science fiction movie podcast. Now, most regular episodes, we get together, we've watched a movie, and we sit and talk about it in depth, often 90 plus minutes, because we're nut jobs, and talking about movies is fun. But that's not what this episode is. This is a countdown episode where we have gotten together and we have decided on our top 25 science fiction movies of the 1990s. We're going to reveal our list, starting at 25, of course, and counting down to number 1. And if you're a patron or a YouTube member, you'll get a bonus video not too long after this comes out, where you can see us deciding and how we debated and deliberated those things, and also get a bunch of honorable mentions that did not quite make the cut, but we talked about them all in that bonus video. But this is going to be the results. This is the top 25 that we have formed together. Tara might call it a compromised list because she wasn't happy she had to not have certain things in certain places.
It's definitely there's some compromises happening.
But that's what it is two people making a list. We have to compromise. It
was hard.
So we're going to get into it. Obviously, the rules are simple. Is it 90s? Is it sci-fi? It's eligible, and that's where. And obviously, we reviewed a bunch of these this past year. We had a 90s season, but obviously some of them were just done randomly before that because they came up. And there's a few here that we haven't reviewed yet, which we will get to at some point. And obviously, there will be more 90s seasons in the future, so there'll be a reason to come back and maybe revisit this at some point down the line, where we can sort of look at it again and say, okay, we've seen another 15, 20 sci-fi movies from the 90s that were weirder, that were less commonly known. Do any of them make the list or shake things up or whatever? So yeah, and there's one or two things that I do like that I didn't even argue for this list, just purely because I hadn't seen them in so long that I couldn't really talk about them or argue why they should be here. So not everything that isn't here is necessarily a snub, or that because I don't necessarily respect it. You know, some of it is just because, it's been long enough that we need to see it again, especially in this case because it was ones that I had seen and Tara hadn't. So it's I can't argue for them because it's been too long and Tara's not even seen them. So that's why I'm not here. Unlike, say, something like Dark City, which is just overrated shit, and that's why it's not on the list.
I think that's a little harsh, but it didn't make either of our lists.
Come on, go back to that. It's our 4th episode. Neither of us were happy about that movie.
Yeah, but in 96 or 7, whenever it came out, I do remember watching it a lot on TV and thinking, this is the greatest science fiction movie ever. It's just, it's aged differently. I have a different taste now. But I wouldn't say it's overrated crap.
I never liked Dark City. Reviewing it for the show, way back at the start of the show, only reiterated all my feelings on why I don't like Dark City.
I also feel the same about 12 Monkeys. It's not going to be on the list. So it's just that it's a good movie, but it's not, I don't know, it doesn't hold up as well on rewatch.
Right. Yes. Okay. Well, I like to say one for shock value for the comedy. Let's stop confirming what's not on the list, so they can get surprised by what's on the list.
All right, I'm done. Those are probably the 2 biggest ones anyway.
In terms of snubs that are why isn't this on the list? Yeah, those are probably the biggest ones.
This is on all the other prestige sci-fi lists.
Yes, but they're all wrong, and we're right, except a few things that I had to let Tara have, again out of compromise, which I suppose. But that's what makes it our list. That's what makes it the ACE list, the Atomic Cinema Experiment list.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me include Rocket Man in the top 5.
Don't worry, everyone. Don't worry. She jests. And that was funnier than most of the jokes that are in Rocket Man, ironically. So, so without further ado, I think we'll just go back and forward, revealing them. So I'll let you. Actually,
do you want to do number 1, huh?
Well, do you want to do the odds or the evens? It's up to you.
Yeah, I'll do the odds.
Do I do the odds? You want to reveal number 1? Okay. All right. Well, what's number 25?
I'll do the evens.
Why? Why have you changed your mind? Why is this such a big decision?
I'll do the evens.
Okay.
You do the odds.
Is there a reason?
Maybe. I'll keep it close to the chest. And you go first.
Oh, is there a movie in the evens that you really want to reveal? Is that what it is?
What's the first one? Number 25.
Okay. Number 25 is controversial pick, Alien 3.
Yes.
Which
I think we watched this one this year and reviewed it.
yeah, this was the movie we did for Alien Day this year. We did Alien 3, which is a very flawed film. It's obviously not what everyone wanted after Aliens, and it's obviously it got its problem, especially the theatrical cut. I think the longer cut, the assembly producer's cut or whatever it's called, is the better version and has some interesting like subplots that make the film feel more full. But as far as positives go, I do think it is a very visually, beautiful. It's a really grimy, dark film, but it's a really beautiful grimy and dark.
It's a very cool like 90s science fiction movie. I think that Fincher coolness is in there, even if it is also Fincher like that filter he uses where everything kind of looks like slightly vomit colored.
Yeah, but this was first. This was the first movie he made, so this was before everything. This is before even 7.
Right. Yeah. So this is more of a reflecting, looking back on it. This is where it all began. But I think I'd argue for this one to be on the list over our to at least make the cut.
Yeah.
Because I think of all the things that we had to choose from, this one still feels very sci-fi. It takes place off-world. It's a really cool like prison colony. I do enjoy like the characters that we get. They are very caricature, but they're still, and it feels really unique, and the dialogue's really good. And even though I don't love, that this is the next Alien movie after Aliens, if you just kind of like, okay, let's just go with it. It's kind of a cool Ripley story still.
I kind of go back and forth on how I feel about Alien 3 every time I watch it, just depending on my mood. But it definitely visually has a lot going on, and especially in the assembly cut, there's a great shot where you see Charles Dance's character, I think it is, running across like the horizon, and you see like the big like refinery in the background, and it feels really, otherworldly. It feels like it is like this different like harsh world that they're on, and so from an aesthetic point of view, like I like it's oozing in style, which is I think why ultimately it ekes out a place onto a list like this. Now, when I see more sci-fi from the 90s and maybe it gets bumped off, like it could get bumped off, but I think part of the fun of doing like a list like this is that you kind of want some picks that feel personal to us, that make it a bit more unique than just here's the aggregated like objective best movies, because there's definitely some picks on here that are because we love them and not because they're necessarily objectively great movies. And yes, and if Tara had her way, like 90% of it would have been that. I had to rein her in. But Alien 3 definitely visually very stunning and has a cool tone, even if it's does have elements where you're like, God damn, you did this after Aliens? What the hell? Like, come on. How dare you kill these characters off that I cared so much about? But that's a debate for this one as old as time, basically since the moment it came out. But it's an interesting one though. If nothing else, even if you look at Alien 3 as a failure, and I think that's a fair thing to think of it as, it's an interesting failure with a good story behind why it failed. The making of documentary on it, the big long 3.5 hour one that you get if you get the Blu-ray, or you get the if you get it on iTunes or whatever. Like, that documentary is fascinating because it is this like troubled production and like all the things that went into it. So
yeah, I think it's kind of sad that Fincher sort of disowns this movie too, because it is still a movie to be proud of, even if it's not the movie he ultimately wanted to make.
It would be fascinating if he like eased up enough just to like talk about it, just like do a commentary track and just talk about it, even if you are going to be like negative about your experience and talk about the studio and all that. And maybe in some level they didn't want him to, because he still made a lot of films with Fox, like Fight Clubs with Fox. I'm sure there's at least another one or two films that he did with Fox. So maybe it was like there was still a working relationship, and part of it was like, we don't talk about you in Alien 3, you don't talk about your time in Alien 3, and we make more movies together, right? Maybe that was part of the deal, Well, that's how the relationship was able to just ignore the baggage and just move on to new things. But yeah, Alien 3 is number 25. What's 24, Tara?
Number 24 is Small Soldiers. which is I know a movie we both like. I think also we haven't seen it in a while.
Yes, that's true. So it could be higher. This may on a revisit to this list, it could be much higher once we've both rewatched it.
Yeah, it definitely has a lot going for it. I remember going to the movies to see this. I was so excited to see it because I was a huge Phil Hartman fan. And unfortunately, he was murdered that year. But I knew that this was his last movie, so I had to go see it. And I collected like all the cards and stuff. You can buy cards in a pack, trading cards for the movie at the time. I don't know. And I had all of them. I don't really remember exactly what makes it sci-fi. I guess it's some sort of invention going on. I can't quite recall.
Well, the toys come to life. That's definitely science fiction.
They come to life. It has to be through some sort of like...
I want to say there is
remember why.
There's like a satellite dish involved.
Yeah, I'm getting visuals of some sort of machine that does it. Or,
in fact, I'm pretty sure Phil Hartman.
Go ahead.
I'm pretty sure Phil Hartman's the one installing the satellite dish in his backyard or something at the start of the movie. I want to say that's right. It's been a long time. Look, Tara wanted to put this here, and I don't remember it well enough to really fight for it, but I like Joe Dante enough that I'm like, yeah, I'm happy to have Joe Dante on my list.
It's Joe Dante, it's got Phil Hartman, it's got Dick Miller, and it's got a bunch of tiny army men who are actually badass action stars.
Well, they're the villains, right? They're the soldiers are the villains, and then the other toys kind of like... So, because I think
it's kids too, yeah.
Yeah, I want to see Tommy Lee Jones as the main.
I think that's
soldier.
right. Yeah, the one that looks like the villain from Avatar. It looks like Quaritch.
It does, yes. Also, Nikolai from Resident Evil 3, which.
Yeah. Anyway, making the list made me go, I should probably watch this again, but there's no way. There's no way I'm wrong about it being at least 24.
Yeah, it was basically like the feeling of this one was like this definitely beats all the other things we were considering that didn't quite make the cut. But we don't remember it well enough to argue for it to be any higher. But we feel pretty confident that Small Soldiers deserves to be here.
Yes.
At least without seeing some other gems or something that we haven't quite gotten to. That might shake things up. But yeah, Small Soldiers number 24. Number 23, Demolition Man.
Whoa.
Yeah, this is Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes. It's basically a sci-fi comedy. It's kind of a sci-fi action movie, but the action's the worst part. What makes it great is the characters and all the comedy of him being in this future. Sandra Bullock is kind of the heart of the film. It's kind of the standout gem. Even Rob Schneider's got a few good jokes.
He's barely in it, but yeah, it's.
But he's funny when he's there.
But he is funny, yeah. You're right, because there's something about the earnestness of everything they say that sounds incredibly ridiculous. But same with like Sandra Bullock is such a standout in the movie for me, just because she's so like cute. Like she's like a kid watching an action movie, and it's almost like her last action hero.
Kind of.
Stallone comes from the past to like be the badass action hero, but it's not exactly what she expects, and he is very much a fish out of water. But I enjoyed the future, the jokes, and that remind me a lot of jokes that we get in Futurama, where it's just like someone from our time is in the way future and things don't make any sense, or like their history of our time is just completely wrong and silly. Anyway, yeah, it's a fun movie, but I agree, like the thing that keeps it from being great is that the action is just not done very well, and it is an action movie, so it can be kind of frustrating, especially in the third act.
The action is the weaker part, which is why I think the last half hour is by far it falls down a little bit because the climax isn't that big a deal. It doesn't feel like you care about it, because what makes it good though is all the entertaining banter between Stallone and Sandra Bullock and any of the other side characters that show up. Like, even
Wesley Snipes is a fun villain.
Yeah. When we were watching, we did it earlier this year. Was it part of 90s season or just something we did earlier on? I can't remember. But either way, when we did it, like, it was fun hearing all these old lines again and remembering, what is your boggle and things like that. All the stuff that Sandra Bullock says that is like wrong about, she tries to say like a 90s phrase and gets it completely wrong. Some of them come out sounding, in fact, all of them come out sounding a bit of an innuendo. They all come out sounding like, let's go blow this guy. Away, go blow this guy. Oh wait, that's a funny line. And the way she just goes, whatever. Like, no, not whatever. You're saying you're going to find the villain and the give him fellatio. That's a big difference between that and kill him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's silly fun, but the humor really excels in the film.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a really funny movie. Like that's what elevates it so much, is the comedy is actually really good. And it doesn't really skimp on its like set design. You know, it looks like they've put money behind it enough to make it feel like they can create a sci-fi futuristic city of San Angeles, I want to say.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I want to say it was San Angeles, but yeah. So good. All right, what's next?
Next one is a very special movie. Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country.
What number is it?
The final film.
What number is it?
Number 22. Thanks for doing that.
You didn't see what the number is. It's kind of important.
Number 22 is Star Trek VI.
There you go.
The Undiscovered Country. The final film of the original 6, if you want to call it that. The 6 motion picture films from the original series cast, and which are obviously very important to me as a major Trekkie all my life. And I think this one's really fun. This one's probably more action-y, but also like you get a deep dive into Kirk and some of his issues with not giving his personal issues with the Federation allowing the Klingons in. And, you know, obviously there's a lot of history there, and Kirk needs to get over some personal biases, and obviously some things happened with him in the past that we are aware of. And there's a fun prison breakout scene. There's I don't know, it's like the last hurrah. This is of like the original films. This one's pretty high on a lot of people's list. I'd say it's more medium tier for me, just because everyone's getting pretty old by this point, and it's very obvious why they had to switch to the original series for the next films. But I do still love that cast, that crew, and we get one last fun adventure with them.
Yeah. I think this is an important plot point in Star Trek lore, because this is the turning point of where the Klingons become part of the Federation, which is something that had to happen for Next Gen. It actually feels like it's the perfect plot to doing your final original series film. But I do think the film itself is a little, I don't know, lackluster in places. You know, when I reviewed it with Connor, both of us kind of felt like, oh, this wasn't as like, because I think 1 to 4 all have merit. 1 to 4 are all various degrees from good to great.
Well,
all right.
You're skipping one. Okay. Teach their own.
Are you complaining that I'm not praising 5? Is that what you're saying? I mean, 6 is definitely better than 5, but it's like, if anything, it's like at least less interesting than 5. So obviously this is here because Tara fought for it. Tara was fighting for every Star Trek movie she could, right? That's you know, that's the truth of it.
I opened with it, right? That was like, that was my opener. Like, well, we got 4 Star Trek movies. Where are we gonna put them?
And I'm like, hold your horses. We'll see which ones make it. So yes, I conceded enough to let Star Trek 6 in. So I mean, I think it's got some positive points, but yeah, this was Tara's baby that she was fighting for. So
yeah, I think it is a good movie to close the chapter of the original series. I mean, just the whole, like, this is so different. Like the whole series, the Klingons were like the big enemy, the big recurring enemy, you know, and now they're being accepted into the Federation, and there's some, you know, people who have problems with that, and you can definitely see why Kirk would have a problem with that, and like getting past his racism in a way for it, because he can't see, you know, and he's got, well, the stuff on the ship also is pretty good. Like, it's very separate from what's going on with Kirk. You know, the stuff on the ship, there's what's her name from Samantha from
Kim Cattrall.
Yeah, Kim Cattrall is a Vulcan on the Enterprise, and is you know, Spock's kind of taken her under his wing to teach her, and there's a whole plot line with her going on. There's some espionage happening. There's some people who maybe, I don't know, like, it's just a really fun story that's going on the ship, apart from what Kirk is doing as well. And it's nice to watch a movie after 5, which I love 5 obviously, but it is a very ego heavy movie for Shatner, and then watching a movie where Captain Kirk is not being very heroic in the beginning, you know, where he's got some things to overcome.
It's more of a ballsy move to actually say this is a movie about a potential change for the better in the Star Trek world, but the main thing we're dealing with is the prejudice of some of our main characters. And while it's somewhat understandable because they've lived through a war with this enemy, it's very Star Trek to have those characters get over it to make it's a good story to tell. I don't think the movie necessarily lives up to the potential of it, but I do think the core story of it is good.
Okay.
All right. 21 is Strange Days. This is Catherine Bigelow's film from 1995. This is a very mixed film in that there's the murder mystery part of the film is actually pretty weak, and the ending of it is especially bad. But the movie's really good because it's a very political film that talks about police brutality. It talks about racism in America. It's set in like a near future where it's kind of like these weird like VR like memory headset things that record memories and you can experience the feelings of them. But effectively, when you watch it now, it's like it's predicting being able to film things with your phone and like how that can affect certain things if people can like have evidence of certain things happening. And all of that stuff is fascinating. The relationship between Ralph Fiennes' character and Angela Bassett's character, I think their chemistry and their back and forth and what their story is great. And everything it's doing except the murder mystery part is actually really good. And the world that it sets up is just this kind of grimy near future is really strong. And also co-written and produced by James Cameron as well. It's worth mentioning probably.
That makes sense. Doesn't it take place in Los Angeles also, or am I misremembering?
I think so. That's it. That sounds right.
But yeah, this is sort of has like the Starship Troopers thing of like the military sort of taking over. Like it's a very police state future for America in this, and it's almost like it's happening in the background around the murder mystery, but that is the more interesting stuff that's going on. Mm-hmm. You know, like crime is too high, so police who are normally there to protect and serve have now turned civilians into the enemy, and therefore they look like the army. Mm-hmm. So there's like constantly tanks going around, things are just on fire, there's always protests. It's just a really chaotic future, and people are trying to just like, it makes sense that there would be an advance in technology for experiencing pleasure, because this terrible world requires more like extreme ways of escapism. Yeah.
It's like I say, it's got its flaws, but what it's doing right, and the reason why it is kind of this gem that people bring up from time to time is, when I was a teenager and I was looking for more sci-fi, this was something that came up a lot in like lesser talked about 90s movies you should check out. And I don't think I appreciated it at the time. I had to get older and sort of like have more like just general world knowledge before I could appreciate what this movie was doing. But once I did, like I do actually think it's doing a lot of great stuff. So I think it absolutely deserves a shout out. And I'm never going to like put it above like films that are just complete across the board like winners. But what it's doing with those political elements is really, really strong and kind of ahead of its time. So
that was Tom Sizemore in it too, right? With the wig.
That's one of the negatives. Yeah, it's Tom Sizemore with the long hair. That said, though, Tom Sizemore with any hair is a negative.
It's just too jarring.
Yeah. So there you go. What's next, Tara?
Oh, what is next? All right, number 20 is another franchise film, Back to the Future 3, which is a 90s movie. Yeah. How fun.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this was kind of a weird one because obviously I love the Back to the Future trilogy so much. Most people do, unless your name's Connor. And like 3 is kind of this thing where some people prefer it more than 2, and some people prefer 2 over 3. Almost everyone agrees that 1 is the best.
Yeah, growing up, I would say I would put 3 over 2. I don't know if I agree with that still, but I liked the Western.
Yeah, sure. 3. Yeah, but like, I think it's if anything, like you could argue it should be higher in some ways, because Marty and Doc are such likable characters in their adventure in this time period, and it's so heartwarming and funny. Trying to like sober Doc up, for example, when he's supposed to be having like a gunfight at noon, or Like just the wacky ways of like, you know, the challenge in the first movie is like, how do we like get the amount of energy that plutonium normally gives? Is this 1.21 gigawatts of electricity? And then I love that the problem in the third movie is much more pared back. It's like, no, we've got that part sorted. The problem is getting the car to go fast enough. It's meant to go at 80 miles per hour, and we live in a world without, you know, fuel. Like there's no regular fuel to just go garret. How do we do it? So it becomes this plot about trying to like steal a train so that we can use the train to try and get it to 80 miles per hour by pushing it. And I'm like, I love how you just take the problem for the first movie and you say, but what if it was just something simple that's easy today that wouldn't be easy, you know, 100 years ago in this case at the time. So I love that. I love the premise of it. You know, the love story with Doc is like, it's fine, you know, it's sweet at places, but it maybe takes a little bit too much screen time. Is maybe why it slows it down a little.
Like, yeah, I'm happy for Doc to have this in his life, because he is a really likable character, and he seems like he's just so obsessed with work that he never had time for this kind of thing, for romance. And it's interesting that he feels more comfortable having a romance in a time in the past versus the future, or modern day, present day, whatever. I do like seeing also like Mad Dog Taggart. I think he's of all the Taggarts, I think he's my favorite.
Was it Taggart? The name Taggart's not ringing a bell.
Oh, I thought it was. Maybe I'm misremembering. I thought it was Mad Dog T.
Mad Dog Biff. Mad Dog. I don't remember.
Biff. I don't know.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just go on. Right, the Biff character of the old
Biff
West.
character, Mad Dog. Yeah. Tannen? Is Tannen right?
Tannen. That sounds right.
Okay,
Tannen sounds right. Yeah, not Taggart.
Sorry about that, guys. But Mad Dog Tannen. We got there.
Yeah, no.
I think of all the Biffs, he's my favorite Biff.
Oh, that's fair. Actually, there's something that I didn't know, and we've not reviewed the Back to the Future trilogy yet, and we will obviously. And the'll be if our attempt to do the first one that failed that one time,
it's cursed.
Is anything to go by? They're going to be very long reviews. But the towards the end of the film, not to get too spoiler, but there's like a gang in present day that Marty's almost in a street race with, headed by Needles. I only just found out the other day that all of his cronies in that scene, like each one's from a different Biff gang from a different time period, like the actors. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's just kind of funny that
neat.
It was just a neat little thing.
Any of them, what's his name, Billy Zane?
No, Billy Zane's not one of them, but Billy Zane's obviously in the first and second movie in the 50s period. Yeah, so no, like Back to the Future 3 is still really great. It's fun, and it still gets a lot of things right, and it's a nice spin on what the other movies had done. And you know, the second one does foreshadow that there's going to be romance explorations for Doc. You know, there's that joke in the early on the second film. He's like, you know, maybe when I'm done with all this time travel stuff, I can finally devote myself to university's other great mystery, women. And that's kind of the joke. But it's a funny moment, isn't it? So, yeah, no, good stuff. Number 19. Another sequel. This one might be controversial to some, but Predator 2.
What?
I love Predator 2, and I will like, don't get me wrong, it's not as immaculately directed as the first one is. The first one's a masterclass.
But it's so maligned. And I don't know why.
Yeah, it gets a lot of shit. It gets this shit like it's one of the worst sequels ever made, and I do not understand. Like, it's so much fun. It's got a great cast. You got Bill Paxton, Gary Busey.
I like that you open with Bill Paxton, but yeah.
yeah. Why wouldn't I open with Bill Paxton? Obviously, Danny Glover.
Because Danny Glover.
Yeah, I mean, no, he's great in the lead role, but Bill Paxton's like, you know, he's a gem, that man. And
Danny Glover like introduces himself in the movie like straight from Lethal Weapon. Like, he took the car and he just drove into the set. We're hanging out of it, shooting at bad guys.
But he's acting more like Riggs, though, is the thing. He's not his character in Lethal Weapon. He's kind of the opposite.
He's definitely not too old for it, yeah.
No. And in this movie, he's like, you kids today don't even know how to be a tough old man. I'll show you how to be a tough old man. But you take it out of the jungle, you put it in the city, the urban jungle, and you expand the predator's weaponry. You have, there's a lot of fun predator moments in the second one.
Not just the weaponry, but like all the lore that we get extra, which is, I think, a cool carryover from the first one, where it wasn't just this alien came. Like, he always had really cool tech that said a lot about the planet he came from. And I think this one adds to that a lot, especially by the end, where it doesn't feel like it betrays anything that's set up from the first film.
No, it just expands upon it a little bit, and it's legitimately funny in places. I won't spoil the context. I'll just say I don't think he gives a shit is one of the funniest lines in any movies we're going to talk about today. So like, yeah, I love Predator 2. It's
Predator 2 is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's maybe
with some really great set pieces too that are missing from some other Predator sequels.
One may argue most of the rest of them.
Yeah, like the subway scene is like one of the best.
Yeah, subway scene is great. There's a scene that's sort of in the rain with the puddle where he sort of decloaks, which is really good. The entire kind of chase at the end with Danny Glover across the rooftops and all that, it's all really fun.
It also kind of feels like a leftover 80s movie too. Like, it doesn't it is 90s, and there's a lot of 90s things going on, but it feels like it's part of that 80s.
There's some crossover. Yeah, there's some crossover vibes for sure. It's set in the distant future of 1997.
My favorite old future.
It wasn't old at the time, obviously now it's quite funny. So yeah, that Predator 2, I will stick up for Predator 2. It's been a fun time. I'm not saying it's high art, I'm not saying it deserves any accolades in those kind of realms, but I think it's a good time, and I think it is a better sequel than a lot of other sequels out there. So there you go. What's next, Tara?
All right, number 18 is the longest movie we've ever done for the Ace, and that is Until the End of the World, which was a Wim Wenders film.
Yep.
With William Hurt.
If I recall correctly, it clocked in, the director's cut that we watched clocked in about 4 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah, I think it was just shy, because I made a joke that I'm starting this 5-hour-long movie, and you were like, haha, that's funny. And then didn't realize that you didn't give yourself enough time to watch the movie. Well,
that's because I looked at the runtime in IMDb, but that was the theatrical cut. So I saw like 3 hours and 10 minutes and thought, it's long, but it's normal long. And then
I don't know if that movie's good. Probably because the movie has a lot of style, but like the long version of it, I mean, obviously it's going to feel long, but it's still, it's more of like a Terrence Malick long,
Yeah,
like you want to take in all the atmosphere and everything that's going on around.
It's a journey movie where, like, I think even the selling point is like, it was shot in 4 continents, and it is. You go from like place to place, and you've got this sort of destination road film, and these 2 characters that are kind of traveling together, but also kind of chasing each other as well. And then it's set in the near future, so there's a little bit of sci-fi, but then the real sci-fi concepts come in like the last hour or so, which is quite late on in this film, but it gets into some really interesting ideas about memories and life and stuff, and dreams, and so Max von Sydow eventually shows up, so he's another big name to have in the film.
I totally forgot he was in that. Yeah, you're right, because he does show up in, like, I guess what you would consider the third act of the movie.
I think this movie's got more than
break structure.
Yeah,
so.
this has got more than 3 acts. I don't think we can say this has got a 3-act structure. Maybe 13 acts.
Yeah, I think we found this one because of the Criterion app. I think it just sort of appeared on that, and we're like, "Oh, what's this? Check it out." Yeah, because I think Criterion released it the year that the app came out.
Yeah, they did the big Blu-ray, which is the remaster, the director's cut, and all that. Which I'm glad they did, because I love some of Wim Wenders' other films, which aren't sci-fi, but
are long.
But they're longish. I wouldn't say Wings of Desire, Paris, Texas are like super long.
Well, I mean, they're not the traditional. Let's make it under, like, between an hour 30 and 2 hours.
Yeah, but they're not much more. I mean, compared to this movie's nearly 5 hours long. So, I mean, it's definitely nothing close to that. It definitely feels more normal in terms of, like, what they are. So, it's a really good sort of I mean, I think Terrence Malick's an interesting comparison. Actually, it doesn't feel exactly like that, but in the same way that
it's trying to take in the environment.
Yeah, you're absorbing the details of the world that they're in, and there's a lot of them traveling, driving, a lot of like intimate conversations along the way and stuff. But there's a lot of vista shots. There's a lot of let's enjoy all of the world that we're showing, because ultimately the sci-fi concepts to get to in the last chunk of the movie do kind of bring into question what it means for the world. So it kind of feels fitting that we've traveled most of the planet by the time we get there, and it kind of, it works.
True. It's more like maybe less Terrence Malick and more like David Attenborough.
But no, honestly, like all of Wim Wenders' films have elements of what we're talking about here. This one's obviously got the most of it, but they all have this kind of feeling of like I watched a movie called Alice in the Cities that he did, which again, it was this travel film with a guy and a young girl who he ends up kind of looking after because she's like without her parents or whatever. Her mother, actually no, if I remember right, the setup is that her mother kind of ditches, like the mother's like talking to him and then like ditches her with him, just sort of randomly, and he's kind of lumped with this like teenage girl or young girl that he has to take care of. So it's this road trip of him like taking her to like a grandparent or something, but they have to go through like multiple train rides to a different city and stuff like that, and a lot of it is just taking in like the journey and like them bonding as it's happening. But unlike a lot of normal stories where it's like all these events that happen on the way that make them bond, a lot of it is just being in the environments and being in these different places and all that stuff.
Yeah, you really appreciate the beauty of the world.
Yeah, so it's very good. So what have we got next? It's me. Number 17 is we're back to some silly B-movie amazingness, and that is Time Cop.
Woohoo!
I love Time Cop. Maybe this is the sort of thing where you have to grow up at a certain age in the 90s to appreciate some of these movies, but Time Cop, I love Time Cop. It's probably my favorite Van Damme movie.
Van Damme movies, yeah.
I mean, I like a number of them, but this is probably my favorite one. Maybe it's because it's Jean-Claude Van Damme crossover with science fiction that I just...
Well, yeah, plus it's sort of peak him. You get like everything you want from Van Damme. You get a fantastic mullet. You get splits to avoid electrocution.
Yeah, you get the future of 2004, and then you get this idea of time police where he goes back in time, but then of course it becomes very important to his own backstory, and maybe he'll get to change stuff from his past. The bad guy is extra slimy.
Oh yeah,
like he's proper yuppie. Great stuff.
Plus, it's a movie with blank cop. The title Blank Cop, those are always going to be fun because you're dealing with a loose cannon.
Of course, yes. And in this case, being a loose cannon means, go to a different time period. Like
time travel.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot of fun elements to it. You get different time periods, obviously, in the plot, but...
Like, the movie doesn't hide what it is. I mean, even from the title, you know exactly what you're getting, and it delivers everything you want. We talked about Demolition Man already. It's kind of like that. You see Stallone, Snipes, they look kind of silly on the poster. They're gonna fight, but this one I think delivers on the actual fighting and the action and the comedy of taking Jean-Claude Van Damme seriously. And there is heart to it. The heart maybe doesn't come off as well as like other films, but yeah, he's a family man after all.
Yeah, yeah, like him constantly being upset about his dead wife, and like that subject every time it comes up, and then obviously it's time travel, so this idea that he'll get to see her again via time travel when they're not supposed to do anything, they're not able to go back and do it, change their own past or visit themselves or anything like that.
Oh, it's just business.
But of course the plot gets to the point where the villains are kind of involved and blah 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 blah. So like, I don't know, I think Time Cop's a really fun movie, and I think it doesn't quite have to I think Demolition Man has bigger stars in it. Like, Stallone is a bigger star than Jean-Claude Van Damme. There is no disputing that. And Stallone is more talented as well in general, just in the sense that not only is he probably a bit of a better actor, he's also written and directed movies and stuff like that. So he's obviously just a higher credit. And like Mia Sarah, what's her name is from Ferris Bueller, is in this as the wife.
Yes, I think that's right.
Like, she's nice and all, but she's no Sandra Bullock. Okay, so Demolition Man has the better cast, easy. But this movie, I actually think, like you said, is a complete package where everything I want from it nails. Whereas I'd say Demolition Man does the one thing, the charisma and personality of the characters being really funny is better than the elements in this movie. But the other elements in that movie let it down a little bit. Whereas this is like, no. You want him doing cheesy one-liners when he kicks people for a kill shot. You want him making all these weird threats. You want a yuppie villain who's got the greasy hair slicked back. He's got the beard. He's like it's basically Ellis from Die Hard, but it's not him, the actor. I don't think it is. But I don't think it is. But he could be Ellis from Die Hard. That's what he feels like. This is one we actually did in the show, but we did it as a bonus episode. So if you're a Patreon member or a YouTube member, you can go back and check out that review.
That was before we knew what the bonus episodes were going to be. So if we were to do it now, it would be on the regular channels.
Probably.
Hey, now it's behind a paywall.
Yeah, you can go check it out. It's there. So yeah, there you go. That is that's typed up. All right, what's next?
Number 16 is one of my favorites, and I actually just rewatched it a couple days ago, and that is Starship Troopers, a much misunderstood movie from Paul Verhoeven about a future, much like Strange Days, that is very militarized, and it's very it's a future that's been flipped on its head a little bit, where the people who are running the schools are all patriots. People who deserve citizenship have to serve in the military. The Earth in this future is currently at war with Klendathu, which is an insectoid planet. And we follow our lead character of Casper Van Diem, Johnny Rico. And him choosing to serve, to get citizenship, to gain respect of all the teachers that he's grown up with. And also Denise Richards is in it, and she's following a similar path. It's just a really interesting look at our future if it was a fascist state where they were the ones that were the heroes.
I appreciate what the movie is. Obviously, you fought for this because this is the one you love.
This was obviously going to be much higher on my own personal list.
Yeah, we reviewed this. I can appreciate what it's doing, but I just don't feel anything for it in the same way that I do for Verhoeven's other films that I enjoy. So, I respect it. You got it at 16.
Yes, I did.
My contractual obligation to acknowledge it has been fulfilled.
Well, I'm happy to represent the masses here, because I think most people agree that this movie is brilliant. It's stupid, like on the surface level, it's a stupid action film, but it's actually very layered, very deep, and there's a lot going on here that I think is incredibly smart.
I don't dispute any of it, really, because it's Verhoeven, and I get what he's doing when I watch it. I think other films that he's made can make the same sort of satirical points, but also give me a character to root for. Whereas inherently, because Starship Troopers is following all these assholes that are in the fascist regime.
But they're so beautiful.
Just makes me hate them more, okay?
I love beautiful people.
Yeah. There's some nice shower scenes where they get naked. That's all I remember.
Yeah, but it's only tops. You get some butts, actually.
I love how Tara's like, yeah, but there was no full frontal. I wanted to see some Casper cock.
That's okay. If he wasn't comfortable with it, it's all right.
All right. Number 15 is The Fifth Element. So this is we just did this recently for 90s season, but this is the bright, colourful, futuristic flying cars version of Earth with space travel included, and there's this prophecy of like the five elements coming together to stop the great evil that's this basically just big ball of evil that's coming to consume all life. And it's about trying to get to these elements and get to the pyramid in Egypt that has the altar to like fire this power that can face evil. But what it really is in terms of how it plays out is you've got your wisecracking comedy action hero in Bruce Willis, You've got your Lilu, played by Mila Jovovich, who's this like new life form who's just learning the world, and there's a lot of comedy that comes from that. But there's some really fun, like, slick action sequences with the really good pacing. It's really, everything's very upbeat. And, you know, I started off this by saying it's colourful because it really is the first thing I think about when I think of this movie, is just how bright and diverse the colours are. It's not this, like, palette of just, like, you know, movies will have, like, okay, this is our colour scheme. Like, no, this movie is just, like, all the colours, all the time, as much as we can fit onto the screen. But it's got a very upbeat, poppy kind of pacing and editing to it. You know,
I feel like you can, like, dance to this whole movie.
You probably can, yeah. Yeah, there's some really interesting percussion going on at various points. Is like, yeah, just like seeing all the things that they've packed into Corbin, which is Bruce Willis's character's like small apartment, and how it all fits together, and you know the shower like moves up to reveal the fridge and vice versa, and like the bed turns around or slots into the wall, and then the counter comes out to make like everything's very. It's just a really like. Nothing about it is necessarily realistic, and that's not the point of this future. The point of this future is just to have fun with the design, and that's really what it nails. But, you know, I mentioned the two leads, but you've also got Ian Holm, you got Gary Oldman, you know, people may not want to mention Chris Tucker. Some people think he's annoying in the movie, and that's a fair point, because he is very loud. But there's a very strong, like, overall cast in this movie, even a smaller role for Luke Perry at the start, funnily enough.
Yeah.
So it really is kind of a big, like, bombastic 90s. Like, I remember like going to the cinema to see this, and I remember being annoyed because I had to go see something else like the week before, and I wanted to see this instead. I can't remember
So you
what
had
it
to
was.
wait a whole week.
I had to wait a week. Well, it's not just that. It's like I had to go see a movie that I didn't want to see as much, and so the entire time I was like, why am I watching? I don't know.
You can probably hear like the walls vibrating from the theater next to you for all the giants.
Oh, wait, why,
Chris Tucker moments, probably.
Yeah, I don't even know what it was. Something nice. I don't know. Why am I watching 101 Dalmatians when I could be watching Fifth Element or something like that? I don't know if it was that, but something like that. So
Yeah, it's probably around the right time.
yeah, but yeah, brings a smile to my face, and I think again the pacing and the energy. There's just so much energy in this movie at all times. And it holds up quite well because it uses a nice mix of practical miniature CG, you know.
Yeah, lots of great puppetry as well.
Yeah.
Some really cool designs with the aliens. I love the ones in the beginning where they're kind of like duck turtles, but they're
the big
but they're
bulky
also,
ones.
Yeah, they have to like waddle and stuff, and but they look kind of machine. Maybe it's probably just like a whatever they're wearing, but they look very cool. And
it's that European influence in the art, I think, that.
Well, it's different, right? So it's something new, and it makes it look a bit more alien than what we are used to. Although I think that the guys that look a bit like froggish almost remind me of other aliens that we've seen. Even kind of there's something kind of Super Mario Brother movie about them too.
I would say they look almost more like bulldog-esque, like.
Yeah. But I mean, it's still maybe something kind of similar, but of that time. But it's still not something that we see very much anymore. It's like they don't look like they belong in Star Wars.
No,
although you could say that, make that comparison,
or Star Trek for that matter.
Yeah, they look very their own thing, their own style, and I appreciate the style of the movie a lot. I mean, the last time I watched it was when we did the review, and I was slightly down on it from the last time or from my memory of the movie anyway. It's not like I mean, I know the movie so well, but if for some reason it went a bit down, maybe I just had a bad day. But in any case, I know this movie is very deserving to be on the list of the top 25 of the 90s. It's an epic film. You know, the characters are fun. The lead characters that we get, I do really like Ian Holm in the film a lot too.
Multipass.
It's one of the most quotable movies of the 90s for sure.
Yeah, in terms of a zeitgeist kind of feel, like people remember this and talk about it still.
Yeah.
So cool. What's next?
Next is number 14, and that is Fire in the Sky. Probably the only movie we'll ever review on the Sci-Fi Show that says based on a true story.
Yeah, we did this early in the year. Not part of 90 season, just part of In fact, no, it was kind of a 90s season. It was like Aliens in the 90s, right? Wasn't there a specific season we did like that?
Yeah.
Because we were doing Aliens 3 and we said let's do Alien 90s movies. So we actually had kind of a mini 90s season at the start of the year as well.
Yeah, the 90s were good for like alien abduction stories because that was, X-Files was huge in the 90s.
A lot of alien movies and a lot of bad
unsolved mysteries
and a lot of bad cyberpunk movies. That's the 90s sci-fi in a nutshell.
Well, there's some good cyberpunk movies too.
We may disagree on that. Fire in the Sky is really good, and it's a movie it's pretty decent, and then the last 30 minutes shoots it into the stratosphere.
Yeah. Talk about a movie that messed a lot of kids up in the 90s.
There's so many good practical effects, so many good. The tone is just unbeatable, and again, the first hour of it is solid enough. It's not it's not amazing, but it's doing a solid enough job building the mystery. And then the last half hour, which really sort of shows you the goods, is just really well done, exciting, visually different, and just feels
horrifying.
It's just. I said this when we reviewed it, but it's basically just the perfect movie version of what you think of a classic alien abduction story to be. And it just
there's so many times you get stories of people who make fun of it, like those people in the cornfield getting anal probed or something, but this show depicts it would be horrific if something took you and just treated you like an experiment, and it's just there's some good teases throughout the beginning of the film too, where you it's filmed in a way where you're like, that is creepy. I don't know what it is I'm looking at, but there's something about this that is incredibly unsettling. And then the payoff obviously is at the end of the film, which does, you're right, the movie gets elevated because of it.
Yeah. So which is not to say the rest of it's not good, because it's perfectly fine, but the last 30 minutes just puts it into a different level where it just escalates everything immediately. So,
it's just really great directing.
Yeah. So there you go. Fire in the Sky. Number 13 is Tremors.
Woohoo!
The Kevin Bacon movie from the start of the decade, which is a big game of lava where they can't touch the floor, because if they touch the floor, their footsteps will vibrate, and the monsters that are underground, the graboids, will come and get them. And that's the basic premise of this movie. It's a desert town out in Nevada, I want to say, and as a result, it's good fun. Perfection, the vast, right? The town's called Perfection. You're right. But so there's a lot of them on top of the one little store that's in the main street of the town. They're on the roof, or they're up
this
poles,
is the smallest of small desert towns. I don't even know if there's a road that goes through it.
So you've got bright characters. You've got obviously the main couple of characters, Fred Ward and Kevin Bacon, but then you've also got a nice concoction of supporting characters that are all kind of fun. They're memorable enough that who they all are. The action is all done really well, where you get the geography of where everyone is, because it's so important to the film working that it is kind of in many ways the perfect B movie.
I think so. If you tell me list the B movie, I would probably go with Tremors. Tremors just feels right. It's a monster movie that's taken seriously. All the characters are likable, and the one that you don't like, you're not supposed to like. It's just a simple concept, like you said, floor is lava, and the monsters are cool. The graboids are a really cool design. Why they're there, whatever. Makes no difference. We have to fight them.
And the title's perfect because of the vibrations of the ground. Tremors, perfect.
Yeah. I love. I think Kevin Bacon is so likable. Fred Ward too. They're both just they got great chemistry. Their lines don't feel written. They just feel natural. And I think Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward trying to escape this tiny town that they live in. They can't make enough money to do anything. Is cute. And then they're literally trapped by the monsters that live in this town.
And they do sewage stuff, right? So they're getting covered in shit and things like that.
They just do handyman work, right? So whatever's needed, they'll do it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a thing early on where Kevin Bacon gets covered in some shit because he's trying to fix.
Definitely, yeah. I think they're trying to. I think they are actually removing the waste from the tank.
Aye, yeah. So, super entertaining cast. but just the premise is just so strong because it's I love nothing more than the problem solving of trying to get around what the villain is. And in this case, it's like, okay, here's the rules. They're simple. They can hear you if you walk in the ground. You have to be quiet. So it presents with all these rules. So it's a lot of problem solving of getting around that. And even the sequel, which isn't good enough to be on this list, but the first sequel is still pretty solid and presents some new rules to play with. But that's what I like about this so much is that you understand the rules of an audience and the characters have to think of ways to get around it and how can we like explore their weaknesses or exploit their weaknesses, I should say. How can we get around them? All that stuff is super fun to me. So
seeing a truck get buried into solid ground is also a pretty awesome
you've got
thing to see.
You've got the girl from Jurassic Park's and
Lex. Yeah.
And there's it's not Dee Wallace, but I thought it was Dee Wallace.
Not Dee Wallace, yeah.
Yeah.
She'll always be known as not Dee Wallace.
She's not Dee Wallace. That's exactly what she is. So yeah, no, good fun time. What's next?
Oh boy.
Now I see why
Number
you wanted
12.
I see why you wanted the evens now. Like I'm looking at some of the things that
I
are on
feel
the
like
evens.
more of my choices are on the evens, yeah.
Somehow that happened. I don't know how, but on you go.
Star Trek First Contact. I love First Contact. When the movie came out, and it was still not okay to tell people you were a Trekkie, but at least like it was good enough that more people who were not comfortable maybe watching a science fiction movie with Star Trek because they don't like Star Trek or whatever, but we're like, oh, this looks like a good action movie in space. Like, we'll go see that. And that's exactly what it is, which is not really, which is probably the reason why we have an action-focused Star Trek now with all the new TV shows and even like the J.J. Abrams movies. I think it probably started with First Contact because it was such a successful film. And it does kind of ruin the Borg, but that already kind of happened at the end of Next Gen and with Voyager anyway. So I accept, I accept that, and I don't blame this movie for it. But it is we get the cast that we love from Next Generation, led by Captain Picard, on an adventure dealing with trauma, which is an interesting thing to explore since Next Generation was not serialized. So you can actually like get some like, oh, how does this trauma affect him going forward, like as he gets older and as he has to deal with the Borg again and
it's
stuff
kind of
like
it's the same as the original series when they started doing like, Wrath of Khan being a sequel to an episode is like, oh, this is actually way more serialization than the show itself ever had. Is because you're actually and don't get me wrong, there's little bits of it in Next Gen, and there's definitely some things that all like I'm sure it's mentioned again that Picard has a flute, from that one episode at some point. Like there's little things that will call back, but nothing, it's nothing too egregious because they want each episode to function on their own. Right,
they want the syndication money, so people have to watch it, and they won't watch it if they feel like they have to start in season 1, episode 1, which is not an easy thing to plan for when you're watching it live. But yeah, so like this is it's also a time travel movie, which is a formula that works in Star Trek almost every time, and it's fun Star Trek film. Love it. 10 out of 10.
It's another prominent part of Star Trek lore as well, though, because it's literally the time travel takes us back to First Contact Day, so we actually get to see the events surrounding when humans first interacted with an alien race, which in Star Trek lore is the Vulcans were the first one that they talked to.
Yeah, and we get a little bit of history of what happens before then, or between now, present day, and First Contact, when we, go to our next stage or whatever. It's we get more lore about the World War III that happened, what Earth is like, and everybody's just sort of just kind of a scoundrel. It's also a lesson about don't meet your heroes. Yeah.
Yeah, with what's his face? Who's
James Cromwell?
There you go, Cromwell. Also, I was trying to think of. Yeah. So
favorite of mine.
Yeah, it's been all since I've watched First Contact, but it was definitely out of the Next Gen movies. It was definitely one that I remember enjoying the most. Admittedly,
it's definitely the most fun.
I'm very curious to see how I feel about it when I get to it now. When I get to it in chronological order, because now that I really care about the Borg and I love the introduction of the Borg, I'm wondering if I will have more of a problem with what it does with the Borg. But when it was viewed on its own and I didn't know anything about them, it was entertaining.
Yeah, the Borg was at their best when we knew very little about them. The constant dipping into the Borg well, unfortunately, made them worse. But plus, the Voyager takes place in the Delta Quadrant where the Borg are, so like there's too much of a temptation to keep using them, which means the Voyager constantly has to escape the Borg like every time, and that makes them look weak. Also, like the Borg just get weaker and weaker.
Yeah, it's a shame. All right. Well, number 11 is Cube. Just not quite making that top 10. I would have definitely fought for it. I was fighting for Cube a bit more than Tara was. Obviously you did enjoy it a lot when we talked about it. There's a lot of depth to it. But I do think Cube's a very special film. I love when a small, low-budget movie can like make it still feel much bigger by just having such good ideas. And obviously just the core concept of characters waking up in a cube which just connects to other cubes. What is this place? How did we get here? And then the fact that, half of the cubes, maybe the majority of the cubes, have got deadly traps in them, and you don't know which ones are safe to go into. We have to try and escape. But the whole thing's really about, it's the microcosm. And in the same way, Night of the Living Dead is a classic example, is like, okay, we're going to examine society by looking at this small group of characters in a house when they're trying to survive this zombie apocalypse. This is kind of the same thing. We've got a group of characters in this weird, like, trap that, is it aliens? Is it the government? Like, who did this? Who knows? But the way that the power dynamics present themselves and the way that certain characters take charge or don't take charge or react in certain ways, all of it's examining society, which is a very science fiction thing to do. It's easy to think of science fiction as spaceships and aliens and time travel and technology, but at its core, it's always about humans. It's always about how we are with each other. It's always about the decisions we make. Good science fiction always has a purpose behind what the characters are doing and what it's exploring. And this has that in spades. And I think one of our best conversations we've had this past year was in that Cube episode when we were talking about like what those characters represent and what it gets to.
Yeah, I think that's the strongest part of the film for me, is definitely the archetype characters, which are very purposely in this film to be very, archetype.
Archetypical is the word you're looking for, I think.
Yeah, I don't like saying typical at the end of. Like, I don't like stereotypical. It sounds like a bad word. I don't know. I don't like using that word.
I don't mean it in a bad way. It's just, I think that's...
It's not like a bad word as in like, oh, that's nasty. It's like a bad word, like, just doesn't flow off the tongue right. I don't like it. There's some like, I don't like the word mouth. Because it sounds like mouse, but you like said it wrong. Youthful. Ugh. Some words I just don't like. I don't like archetypical or stereotypical either. Yeah, bad words. But anyway, I like the archetypes of the characters in this movie and how they're used and how they're kind of flipped on their head a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot. Some of the acting's not,
not great,
up to the best standards, but it actually doesn't negate from the film that much.
I think our main guy kind of negates a little bit because of the acting, because he gets real eye acting at one point.
He does. Maybe this is one of those things where, though, I've just seen it so many times over the last 15 years or so that I can't imagine it being anyone but him. So there's a charm to it for me now when I see him do the overacting. I just kind of, I'm endeared to it.
It was the first time I had seen it.
Yeah, so just the stereotypical words coming out of his mouth. Yeah. Just I like how many of these words that Tara doesn't like can I string into one sentence.
Hey, I'm totally fine with moist. Moist is a great word.
Sure, I have no problem with moist, but
that is some moist chocolate cake later.
That's one of the words that most commonly seem to just be randomly disliked by people.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah.
You know exactly what moist means. It's like what is it when like the word sounds like what it is?
Is that onomatopoeia? Onomatopoeia?
Yeah. Moist. I mean, maybe it's not onomatopoeia. Maybe that's more like or something. Or crash is probably onomatopoeia.
Well, I think that stuff like whiff whiff is on, because you say it's a whiff, but it's also literally the sound that you're describing.
Clank kind of sounds like the sound.
Yes. You've put us on like a weird tangent here, all because
I
you're
don't
like,
really want to talk about Cube anymore.
Cube's great, damn it. But we can move on. Cube's fantastic. I highly recommend it.
All right, top 10. We're starting off with a banger.
Yes, we're starting off with a movie that Tara fought for that would be nowhere near the 10 if it was me making the choices.
Contact, baby. We made First Contact, and now we're on Contact, and I obviously it's a very special movie to me. I watched this movie like 4 times in the theater, and I was very young when it came out. I loved seeing Jodie Foster play Eleanor Arroway, just this brilliant woman in like a man's world, although that's not really the point of the film. She's just written so well. I think this is my favorite of the who's the director? Back to the Future director.
Robert Zemeckis.
Robert Zemeckis, right. This is my favorite movie of his because it just speaks to me. Plus it's written by Carl Sagan, another personal hero of mine. I think some of the storytelling in this, it doesn't really hit a lot of people, but it is a very personal film to me. Like it hits me very well. And just her being so right for everything that's happening, and being the right person for the job, and just the world around her, just not listening to her, not taking her seriously. And she's right, and I love, the big dreams that the movie offers, and how people are able to break through and achieve them, and the sci-fi in the movie I think is incredible. I mean, just the scene and the sound design of that signal coming in for the first time is so heavy and weighty and beautiful. It's just and everything that happens after that, of course, is very exciting. The third act is also just incredibly exciting.
Yeah. In many ways, it's the prototype for a superior film that came years later called Cosmos.
Oh God!
I don't make shit. Cosmos is a fine little film.
It's a good try movie.
I mean, I like Contact. I appreciate a lot of what it's doing. I understand why you love it. I don't think all of it clicks for me as much as I would like. There's definitely some elements to it that don't land for me. But
I think your Contact is coming up in a little bit. Honestly.
Oh, sure. But I appreciate a lot of what it is, and obviously I like the director, I like the actors. I mean, Zemeckis, don't get me wrong, this is definitely veering slightly into his sentimental trend, which I'm not as into. But that said, I would put this above Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump is an overrated movie. I'm just gonna.
Yeah, I like Forrest Gump. It gets a lot of hate, and whatever. Like, it's definitely a fun movie. Maybe I'm missing the thing that people hate about it, but
I heard it described recently, but I can't remember who said this. But I heard it described, it's Ready Player One for people who watch the news, and that's a very accurate description of Forrest Gump.
You're right. Like it's a boomer movie for sure.
So but anyway, the point I make is because Zemeckis has got this really sentimental kind of like thing that he does a lot. He's done it in some of his animated movies. After this, he went to do Castaway and all things like that. What's funny is that I actually think one of his stronger movies that came out, more not sci-fi, but he did a movie with Denzel Washington called Flight, which is a really generic sounding title. It's a bad title, but it's
a great movie.
The movie's pretty solid. It's about this alcoholic pilot who is like him, and how low he's willing to go to like save his reputation when he's really should be guilty about something. And I won't for a second spoil it, but that third act, when the moment finally hits, the moment, which I won't say what it is, but when that moment hits, it is so fulfilling. It's like a script.
Honestly, it's probably my second favorite Denzel movie performance. Anyway, maybe not performance, but performance. Sure. I mean, Crimson Tide is the best. Sure.
I get what you're saying. I appreciate Contact. I think it's a really solidly made movie, and it's got a great cast and all the rest of it. But I don't think everything in it lands as well for me as it obviously does for you. So for me, it's always been kind of in that like 7 out of 10 kind of. Well, which obviously for you is way higher, but yeah. That's cool. That's cool. There you go. But you fought for it. You got into that top 10.
Hell yeah.
So there it is. Contacts there.
Yeah, it was it was an easy list to make. I think we didn't really fight that much.
People can go and view the evidence so they can see. There may have been tears at one point.
Oh, did you get that worked out?
Look, Tara started crying before we even got to like the real debate part.
I was not crying.
Silent, you were crying.
I was laughing.
Honestly, I think there was some sort of like weird, like I'm going to cry, so Peter will just give me whatever slots I want.
It kind of worked.
I stood my ground, damn it. All right, number 9, Gattaca. Phenomenal science fiction film starring Ethan Hawke, Uma Thurman, Jude Law, Xander Berkeley, Alan Arkin. There's a whole bunch of names, right? But
Ernest Borgnine, who's also in Small Soldiers.
True, and he's also in something.
He's in like so much stuff.
It was something. It's okay. This isn't out yet because we've recorded them all in advance. But he's in one of the movies. I think he's in the bonus movie we do for 70s Disaster Season on Collector's Cut.
That makes sense.
Beyond the Poseidon Adventure. I think he's in that one. But anything
you watch from the 70s has a very high likelihood of having Ernest Borgnine in it.
He's got a chance to be there. But this movie is such good, strong, thoughtful science fiction, and it's so weird that the director, whose name I can't even remember from the top of my head, like he hadn't really gone to do like a whole bunch of other movies. Like it's so weird that, at least for me personally, it's like this one-hit wonder, but it's such a one-hit. Like it is such a hit because it's thoughtful.
What a wonder.
It's set in this near future where everyone like they can predict kind of like the likelihood that you're going to get certain diseases or die at a young age. So people have babies that are genetically modified to be healthier, and it creates this new form of discrimination where people who have a risk of maybe getting illness at a relatively early age, they just won't get good jobs. They'll get crappy jobs. They won't get a chance to like live out their dreams. So the whole movie is about people, the right of a human being to try and succeed, and the determination.
It's like a whole new class system that's been introduced because of this science fiction element.
But of course, like all science fiction, it's about the class systems that we already have. It's the whole point of it saying that no, the people in the real world that don't get opportunities because of these arbitrary reasons, it shouldn't be this way, and we're going to explore it by doing it through the science fiction lens. It's got fantastic music. It's a great looking movie. It's this very slick near future, and it's very heartwarming. And when we did it for the show not too long ago, because we did it in 90s season, like I found myself getting a little teary-eyed at like a random moment I did not expect, but it hit so hard on this probably like 7th viewing or whatever it is I'm at this point, but it worked really well. There's just that really kind of like you root for the character because it's unfair, and him sort of cheating the system in the future, which is what the movie's about. It's about this character who's not supposed to have all these rights is sort of tricking the system to try and like achieve his dream of going to space, but he's not allowed to be an astronaut because he might get sick and die. So excellent.
Gattaca is obviously it's an excellent science fiction movie that explores. It's an allegory for what's going on today, of course, but it's a great movie about kind of like Contact, having a dream and then people telling you no and breaking through that, like exceeding expectations, exceeding past ableism and classism, and obviously the people who can afford to have their DNA modified by these geneticists before they have a child are clearly the ones that are superior in the society's view. So there's a bit of classism when it comes to just general class, like who's rich and who's poor. And I think it's funny that Ernest Borgnine kind of represents the janitors. Like they got him to be it. I don't know, because he's not a good looking guy. I mean, he's a fine gentleman, but he's a funny looking guy.
He's a character actor.
They definitely didn't select that from the genes. Like, okay, big face.
Just to tease. Wait, no, it couldn't be Beyond the Poseidon Adventure, could it have been? I'm sure it was on a boat, but...
Isn't he in Poseidon Adventure?
Yeah, I think it's just regular Poseidon Adventure, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a regular Poseidon Adventure. Yeah. Well, as it happens, that's coming out on New Year's Eve for everyone.
Whoa.
So look forward to it.
So exciting.
But there's a really funny moment in that movie where he, there's this big dramatic scene with him and his wife, who used to be a prostitute, and he's a cop, and they go into all this backstory and this really over-the-top scene. I'm like, what is the writing in this scene? They're just, like, spouting all this, like, dramatic exposition at each other. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, look out for that review. It's good fun. So yeah, that was number 9. What's next, Tara?
Number 8 is probably the most rewatched movie for me on this. There might be one more. Galaxy Quest.
Which, amazingly, we've still not done on the show.
Is that true?
Yeah, we've still not done it.
I've definitely watched it like 6 times since we started the Ace.
That's fair, but we have not discussed this movie yet. So that's definitely coming up at some point. But
I think for someone who grew up as in a family of Trekkies who would like occasionally, not often, but we did go to a couple of like Trek conventions and stuff. The movie just opens so strong. Like it evokes that feeling of like you're watching this corny science fiction show, but it really means a lot to people. Like sure, like we know it's not real, but like it's just fun. It's fun to dream, you know.
I think the best thing about this movie, other than just how witty and funny and how it plays on all the tropes are, and how it obviously the actors in the film are parallels. You know, Tim Allen's character is very much like a play on Shatner and like how much of a douchebag he can be. But my favorite thing about the film, and the reason why I think it works beyond just being a comedy, is that it feels like at first it's going to be quite cynical about fandom and about the attitude towards fans, but ultimately, like, the meta narrative of the whole film is how important this sort of thing is to fandom, and how fandom is like, it's really heartwarming by the time it gets to the end, I think, about kind of the points it makes, and like, you know, believing in the magic again.
It's the fans that, you know, they have to rely on in the end.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, on a literal sense it is, but I just, even just in broad strokes though, about believing in the magic of it, and like, even, you know,
Sure,
Alan Rickman's whole thing in the movie is that he hates this character. He hates having to say that one line that got him famous from the show. But at a certain point, he wants to say that line. Because it's not just the humans in the film, it's the aliens who think it's real too, that then they also have to live up to be these heroes for. And that's got heartwarming. So, you know, like, there's a lot to it.
What a payoff to that setup, though, right?
Oh, yeah, the payoff
is
final great, yeah.
Time that you say the line, where he's always believed that it's stupid and not real, but he believes that it means so much to this person that he says it for them, and it's a heartwarming and heartbreaking moment.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot more heartwarming elements to it because of that, and so it's got a lot going for it. And the fact that this movie turned out to be so good when it was supposed to be R-rated and was cut down to like remove the swearing and stuff. Like, there's a couple of little remnants of it that you can notice if you're paying attention, but
you don't have to pay attention that hard.
But it is kind of funny that, like, even with that, like, it didn't matter, because ultimately everything that makes the film good was still there. And sure, would I love to see like an R-rated cut just to see what it was like before they did this? Sure, it'd be fascinating. It'd be fun to see, but you know, I don't think it makes or breaks it, clearly, because the movie ends up being so excellent anyway. This is one of these things where I saw it and probably thought it was funny as a kid, but seeing it again a little bit later when I understood what it was making fun of, and also just getting some of the jokes better because I'm older. Yeah, it landed so well. Like, the entire joke
struck a chord with me.
Yeah, the entire joke that Sam Rockwell's character is a red shirt. Like, I didn't get that the first time I watched it, but watching that after like knowing some Star Trek and knowing what a red shirt is made his entire character hilarious the entire time.
Oh yeah, I mean, everybody represents somebody that you know from the franchise. Like you talked about Alan Rickman before, and even
he's a Spock. He's the
even Leonard Nimoy. Like, he wrote a book saying I Am Not Spock, and then wrote another book later saying that was called I Am Spock. You know, so he's even had this back and forth journey. Obviously, Taggart, the actual Taggart, is Shatner, and all of the Shatner tropes are there.
Do you know what I think's funny about that Leonard Nimoy book thing? Is that it's almost like, if you compare it to the OJ book, If I Did It, it's like he wrote a book later saying, yes, I did.
Yeah, does he even need to write that book?
It doesn't, no. And that's the other thing, is that Tim Allen is so perfectly cast. I don't really like Tim Allen that much, and I've just rewatched all the Santa Claus movies. I say rewatch, I'd only seen the first one before, right? Tim Allen, I don't think is that great. I think he's got a really specific, you know...
He was a comedian that became an actor,
Yeah, but like, I don't think there's a lot of Tim Allen-isms that I don't think really work, but as a douchebag, like, take on, like, William Shatner, he is perfect for this role. It works so well.
I highly recommend the documentary about the making of Galaxy Quest also.
I watched it too,
I think it's you get so much backstory about like who they were considering for the role, and the names that they pop off too. I can't really remember them, but like I remember being like, "Whoa, what would that have been like?" But like also, he's perfect. So like, why even consider anyone else?
Yeah, it's funny though that he was not even close to the first choice.
No, like so many people passed on it. That's so funny.
Oh. God.
Anyway, fantastic film.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the get would have been to actually get Shatner to do it, but he probably wouldn't have wanted it.
Would they even offer it to him though? Probably
I don't know.
not.
It'd be kind of weird.
Too old anyway.
Yeah, I suppose. But even like, you know, like the little thing they do at the end, which I won't spoil, but it kind of makes me think of The Next Generation as a thing. Like, you know, it came back for another thing, you know.
Yeah.
Obviously it's not a 1-to-1.
Well, there's the Next Gen in this too. Like even Laredo is sort of like the Wesley Crusher, like the boy wonder that is there, so the kids can have someone to identify with. You get the kids audience, you know. Let's put in a kid.
I'd say it's got more original series like actors in it, but there's definitely a few Next Gen little things that squeak in.
Yeah.
So, no. But yeah, Galaxy Quest is great. It's great on its own anyway, but it's really great if you understand the Star Trek tropes that it's making fun of. But it's also a heartwarming love letter to fandom and what like stuff means to the people who care about it. So, yeah, by all means, Galaxy Quest. All right, number 7 is Total Recall, which is a Paul Verhoeven film. With old Arnie in the lead role, and the manipulation of memories to make him think he's been on this trip, but something goes a little bit wrong, and all of a sudden all these bad people are after him, so he has to get his ass to Mars, which is, you know, in this future is normal. Like there's a colony on Mars. This was a film that I always liked as a kid, but never as much as some of Arnold's other films. And, well, I still like RoboCop more than Total Recall, and I still obviously like Terminator more than Total Recall. When we did this for the show, I really did sort of go, you know what, this is much better than I remember. You know, like my memory like had it at. Like this is a really solid movie.
Yeah, this is more than just 3 boobs. It's
more than just 3 boobs, yeah, which I think is what in your memory you maybe think. I think in my memory it was 3 boobs and it was Arnold's face, like sort of like the weird like eye pop and like, you know, when he, which is
this is the best Arnold face movie. For sure.
Which is not what happens when you would suffocate in like an atmosphere that's not breathable.
No,
but it doesn't matter.
Mars isn't actually red, also.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
But you got Michael Ironside in here as well in a very memorable role. Same with Ronnie Cox, again another RoboCop actor popping up. So
what a cast! You got the Stratagema guy from Star Trek: Next Generation.
Yeah, you got a lot of faces. Obviously Sharon Stone's in there as well. But again, it's got a lot of that humor that you expect in an Arnold movie, because he's got his one-liners and he's got his you know,
so much, satire of Verhoeven.
There's a lot of stuff of the quality of Something About Seeing Someone at a Party, Richter. Like, there's a lot of great moments in this movie, and I don't think this is biting in terms of, like, I think the reason why I'd say RoboCop's a better movie, because I think RoboCop's satire is more on point, and I think it's more heartwarming as well with its lead character. But this movie is so full of ideas, and just like the sets of Mars, the trip to Mars, the memorable characters and villains especially that sort of come out, and then kind of the swerves and twists in the story. Even
like the underbelly characters that we get, you know, for the people just trying to survive.
And I know you just meant underbelly.
Vacation.
Yeah, as in like
you know what I mean.
Yeah, but there's literally an underbelly character that's worth mentioning as well at one point.
Oh, it's so gross. Yeah. It's so awesome.
But you also have like even the ending, like when me and Tara reviewed this, and I think it's a pretty solid episode of the Ace to go back and check out, because we actually disagree still as to what's going on in the movie, because it is actually I think it's open enough that it's one or the other, and I think my arguments as to why it's not what Tara thinks it is stand up still, but you can go back and
sorry,
check
man.
it.
I'm afraid you're wrong.
I think you'll find that you're incorrect on this one, Tara. I beg to differ.
Oh man, movies don't fade to white.
Shut.
They're trying to say something specific.
Movies can fade to white if they want to, as a stylistic touch.
Okay.
Okay. I stand by it. Anyway, so yes, Total Recall's very good.
I agree. Like the Verhoeven sci-fi trilogy is any one of them could be my favorite one.
Fun,
honestly.
I think it's Jerry Goldsmith does the score. It's got a fun score as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and great action in the movie too.
Oh yeah, like when they're fighting through like the X-ray like machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, just set pieces like that. Really, really fun stuff.
Which is not a thing that existed at the time too. That was sort of like using X-ray to like scan people in airports and stuff. That was something that was done in this movie that ended up.
Yeah, but to be fair though, it's not like this movie where there's a big X-ray like wall where you can see them walking behind the screen the whole time.
Well, they had to use special effects to make it work. But I think even the special effects have this charm and comedic element to them. Yeah. They use it to the advantage of the film to
it's like
make the scene even more enjoyable.
It's like a skeleton cartoon of the action playing out when they're behind that X-ray machine. It's kind of fun. But yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, no, Total Recall's good stuff. And I mean, you argued for it a little bit higher than I did. I would have maybe had Galaxy Quest and Gattaca probably a touch higher than this, but I didn't fight you too much on it because it is actually much better than my memory, of my youth had me believe. This was a pleasant sort of revisit where I'm like, you know what, this is better than I thought it was, and I'm happy to see that. So
the best Arnold faces and noises also.
There's a lot of that. Yeah, a lot of that going on. Yes. There's also a great scene at the start where Sharon Stone's like trying to make out with them and he's too distracted by the news.
Sharon Stone can wait.
Yeah, I don't believe you, Arnold. Like people say he can't act. That is acting. I'm going to ignore the woman who's about to be in Basic Instinct, right? Because this is right before Basic Instinct.
Yeah, one of the most beautiful people in the world.
Yeah. I'm going to ignore her because there's something on the news about Mars.
Ooh, he had a calling.
You nerd.
I mean, even the movie opens up where like he's asking his friend, like, "Hey, have you been to Mars?" They're like, "Oh yeah, my friend went there," or like, it's a shithole. Like they're at war all the time. He's like, well, what about recall? Oh yeah, my friend got his brain scrambled when he went there. And still, like the next thing is Arnold's like, oh, I think we should move to Mars, or I think we should go to recall. I think I want to try that recall thing.
All of this is making me want to debate the ending again, but we can't do it. No spoilers.
Okay.
No spoilers. All right. Okay, number 6. This is you. You're on number 6.
Number 6 is The Iron Giant, which is a movie I only watched for the first time this year, but you, I understand, grew up with this film.
I love Iron Giant.
Yeah, this is your contact, I know.
I fought hard for Iron Giant because Iron Giant is a special film. It is maybe my favorite animated film. I'd have to think about it, but maybe. It's Iron Giant. Obviously there's a lot of themes, which is this giant robot comes from space, befriends a young boy. So there's a little bit of E.T. in there. There's a surprising amount of Superman by the time you get to later on in the film, and it's all about is one of these key sci-fi themes that always comes up is the idea of not being what you were made to be. That if you were, it's something that even in like other, it's a little bit sci-fi, it's in the future, but like Logan, for example, there's a moment in that film where he's like, don't be what they made you to be. Like this idea, and even Gattaca actually, right? This don't like they. Because you're not this, you have to be this. No, don't be what the society says you have to be. You can be what you want to be. You can choose to be something, and that's very much what the film's about. It's very heartwarming. And the Superman ties come in because it's directly referencing the story. And Brad Bird, there's a reason why every time someone brings up who do you want to direct a Superman movie, I'm like, Brad Bird would probably be a good choice. And there was a time when maybe that was like weird to say just after Iron Giant, but he did like the best Mission Impossible movie. He's done live action as well now, so at this point it's like, yeah, let him do Superman. Like he can make Superman. But he can do great action sequences. Tell me Tom Cruise on the side of that building in Dubai is not like the best scene in like the entire franchise. Tell me it is.
I mean, honestly, most scenes with Tom Cruise in any Mission Impossible movie, except for maybe 2, make me sweat. So I don't know. Like they're all amazing. Yeah.
We're not talking about who gets you hot and bothered, Tara. We're talking about good action sequences, okay?
Well, I wasn't talking about that, but that could play a factor actually.
I was cracking a good joke, okay? Just roll with it.
Stop thinking about Tom Cruise.
I mean, to be fair, no one's thinking about Tom Cruise that much that way anymore, right?
He looks all right in Maverick. He's starting to look a bit like.
I mean, he looks good for his age, but he's not the heartthrob Tom Cruise anymore.
No, but boy was he.
And he's the Scientology also kind of like neuters the.
No, that's a different Tom Cruise.
The appeal.
I don't like that Tom Cruise.
But anyway, so Iron Giant is you got the voice of Jennifer Aniston as the mom and stuff like that, but it really it's this like classic science fiction tale, and even this idea that you've got a little bit of ET because you've got a kid protecting his alien friend who happens to be a giant robot, but you've also even got a little bit of like Day the Earth Stood Still and stuff like that. I couldn't help but think of that when you've got all the military coming to like deal with the giant robot, and that makes me think of Day the Earth Stood Still. Yeah, so there's a lot of classic science fiction and stuff in it, but it's just this great story, and I get another movie I really like, How to Train Your Dragon, which came later. There's a little bit of that in there with the befriending of the robot is a lot like befriending Toothless and like sticking up for your friend. So there's so many like key themes in this film that I think are so important. I think it's a perfect movie for a kid to learn a lot of good values, if nothing else. But you have this idea of choosing to be something that is just so ingrained into the idea of it, and the idea of this robot, and I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say that the Iron Giant, like, he kind of remembers at a certain point that he was made to be like a kill bot. Like he was made to be a soldier and like be a part of an army, and this idea that he can choose to be something else it's very heartwarming, but it's also just a very important like lesson for the world and for people that you can choose to be something good, and why not choose to be something good. And that's a very Superman like thing, even without referencing it. It's very Superman, but the fact that he's inspired by Superman and sort of like, hey, he was an alien that came to Earth and ended up being loved because he made the choices to be good, and that's what the Iron Giant wants to do. It's all very sweet. But then you've got all the hijinks of like try to hide the giant robot, which is just fun to watch, and like even though he makes like a tremor every time he takes a footstep, but he's like hiding behind trees and all the rest of it. So yeah, fun, delightful characters, good old-fashioned 2D animation before things started to get too influenced by anime with this type of thing. So no, I love Iron Giant. I can't wait till we review it one day.
We will. We'll review it one day.
We will. Yes.
Yeah. I watched it for the first time this year because I also have a friend who was a young boy when the movie came out, and it was like, this movie's so important, you have to watch it. And I guess, it just speaks to a very certain demographic as they're growing up. But it's a good movie. I liked it for sure.
I mean, maybe
you'll probably do most of the talking.
Maybe it's because about a young boy befriending his toy robot that speaks to boys specifically. I don't know, but like I think the messages stand, the test of like age and time and all the rest of it.
Sure, yeah. I'm happy to go into that when we watch it.
Yes. Yep. Excellent. All right, number 5.
All right, well, we finally made it to the best movie, the number one movie of the list.
I'm doing the odd numbers.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Calm down. You can tell Tara's excited.
What's number 1?
Number 5.
Number 1.
Number 5. Which you can tell from this preamble that Tara was fighting to get as high in the list as she possibly could. Number 5 is Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie.
Booyah!
Well, this is yours. You talk about it. There's nothing I can say.
What can I say about Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie, other than life-changing? You literally get 2 movies for the price of one here. Here's the thing. Like, growing up, I was pretty early on a film lover, even more so than television. I just connected with stories, and I love movies. And I didn't know there was such a thing as like a bad movie until like the combination of this film and Ed Wood. I think those are the things that made me realize, oh, like not there's not just movies I don't understand yet because I'm not an adult. There's actually movies that are bad.
I feel like that was building up to a punchline there. You could really like swear if someone was saying, when I was a kid, I didn't know there was bad movies until, and then just insert popular movie that you want to shit on.
I understand why that would come off that way for people who haven't seen those films, but those movies are a celebration of how like movies can not quite meet expectations, even though there was the best of intentions.
Yes.
But yeah, Mystery Science Theater, like it came out, and I just watched it with my family because it was the HBO movie of that weekend of Friday, and we all were just rolling. We were laughing so hard throughout the whole film, and just something changed in my brain forever, where it's just like I love this, and I didn't even know it was a TV show, even though it was called the movie, and not too long after that, my parents, because we were living in Canada at the time. My parents are like, we're moving to California and we'll be close to Disneyland. Yeah, obviously I love Disneyland, but like my first thought was, I'm going to get the Sci-Fi Channel. I'm finally going to be able to watch Mystery Science Theater 3000 TV show. And it did not disappoint. I watched every Sunday. That was my priority, was to be able to be there for Mystery Science Theater. And so yeah, obviously the movie was the trigger for all that. It's probably the most approachable for people who've like to get into the show is to watch the movie, because the jokes are pretty neutral. I'd say whereas the TV show has a lot of timely jokes and a lot of jokes specific to the time that they're doing the commentary, and just the idea of like commentary is pretty big because of this film for me. You know, like being able to watch a movie with people talking over it, and letting you know, either making jokes or like listening to commentary about people who were involved with became a big thing for me too after this, where I liked learning about everything that goes into films because of this. Anyway, yeah, it's a very special movie for me, life-changing, and this is definitely the movie I've watched the most out of everything on this list.
Yeah, I definitely discovered commentary tracks on like DVDs and stuff before I discovered Mystery Science Theater.
Well, some people can't even like listen to them. They can't listen. Like my mother would never watch anything. She didn't like Mystery Science Theater from the beginning, because why are they talking over the movie? Yeah, well,
anyway, Mystery Science Theater is a little bit different, but a commentary track is like it's not meant to be like. If you just want to watch the movie, just watch the movie. The commentary track's like an extra thing where you want to hear them talk about the movie, and the movie's like a visual guide to drive the conversation kind of thing. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I have fun with it. I enjoy Mystery Science Theater 3000. I don't think the movie is as good as some of the better episodes of the show that I've seen, and they're very comparable because ultimately it's the same thing. It's they watch a movie and they crack jokes over it. So inherently, like, I think there's episodes that I've seen that are better than the movie, but it's a solid example.
Yeah, I mean, this would be my top 10 wouldn't include the movie, but like of the science fiction movies, this is the most important one to me, and the most I don't know, door opening one for me in a way.
Yes. And the reason why it counts as science fiction is because the setting of Mystery Science Theater is that it's a guy on a spaceship or a space station with some robots who watch some movie and make fun of it. Are forced
to watch the worst movies ever made by a mad scientist on Earth.
So I would almost like, and Tara's not going to like this, I would almost like say it's not a movie. Just in the same way that I wouldn't say Mystery Science Theater.
It's in the title. So
is not a TV show, and they're kind of their own separate medium, which is not an insult. It's fantastic, but it's its own genre. It's its own thing entirely that's different to fictional movies and TV. It's not quite like non-fiction because they're still playing characters doing the jokes, but it's also not. Yeah, I think people understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that about like Elvira too.
Yeah, I think that's sure.
Although she did have movies.
Yeah, like, I'd say like Mystery Science Theater is closer to something like Joe Bob. Not the exact same, obviously, but it's closer to something like Joe Bob than it is like, I don't know, The Wire.
Well, I mean, there is a serialized element to the storytelling going on in Mystery Science Theater, though.
True. There's running things and things change and they have little jokes about it and stuff. That's true.
Especially, I'd say when Mike comes in, there's a lot more of a continuation when it goes to the Sci-Fi Channel, especially.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on. What's number 4?
Number 4 is Terminator 2: Judgment Day. James Cameron has made our list.
Very good. Yeah, I mean, what do we need to say about T2 at this point? T2's, one of the best sci-fi action movies ever made. It's got a heart to it because Terminator's a good guy bonding with the kid. Hey, a little bit of Iron Giant there in a way.
I definitely was thinking of Terminator 2 watching Iron Giant.
You have some of the best action sequences ever filmed. You got, for the time, groundbreaking visual effects. You've got a great menacing villain in the T-1000.
Mm-hmm. The Fire in the Sky guy.
Yeah, the Fire in the Sky guy. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the other way around. People were saying that's the Terminator 2 guy when they saw Fire in the Sky.
I'm supposed to like him in this?
Yeah, what's funny is that I've been watching Peacemaker and he's in that as Peacemaker's dad and he's like a complete racist asshole in it.
Oh, he's also I guess he's like the same character then in the new Perry Mason.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. But yeah, he's a complete like racist douchebag in that. So it's just this. I'm happy to see him because he's getting the work and he's a solid enough actor. And his you staring at a cat?
Yeah, he's eating flowers.
Okay. So yeah, but yeah, T2 is fantastic, and I think T2 is amazing. I think over the years I have appreciated Terminator 1 a bit more than Terminator 2, but Terminator 2 obviously, it's not only just a great movie, but it's a great sequel because of the way it plays off of a lot of things set up in T1 and sort of subverts them for the sequel in ways that make the characters more interesting. The plot about how Sarah Connor's becoming more of a Terminator, and part of the heart of the story is that she has to like sort of like keep hold of her humanity. Like, I love that part of the movie.
What a transformation. From the first film where you're like, even her, she's like in the first movie, which I also think I like a little bit more, but maybe catch me on another day. But I do think that her character in the first movie where she's so doubtful that this is the future and that she is this person that's going to be the one that teaches the leader of the resistance group, because she's so soft and she's so like kind of valley girl-ish. She doesn't have any kind of military training or combat training or even survivalist training. And then you see her in this movie and she opens up in a prison doing pull-ups and you're like, damn, that's the same actress, even like they're not even just the same character. The transformation, the physical transformation, the character transformation, like everything is
she's barely recognizable when you first see it. At least there's a moment in T2.
Oh, I get it.
There's a moment in T2 where she's like having the nightmare before the park gets hit by the nuke, and she sees herself like in the park and her hair's done like the first movie and she's like got a kid and she's like sort of smiling, and I'm like, oh, I can kind of tell it's the same actress now because this is her with the same kind of look. Yeah,
but this trauma and like this world that she's preparing for because she's experienced a taste of it, it's just like it has turned this, what would have been a normal idyllic life and living in LA and as a beautiful woman has turned her into this not monster, but like almost, like she's forced to.
I think part of the film is she does almost turn into a soulless monster, and that's kind of like a big moment. And it was one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie.
It just sets up right away, like, oh, anybody is capable of like trying to survive in this whatever this future is going to be. So you just like you buy it and you're into it.
Yeah, and the movie does have these central themes about humanity and like kind of machine gain humanity, can a human lose humanity, then like all these things all work flawlessly together. And it's actually, people obviously remember it as this great action movie, but it's got a lot of depth that if you stop and then we did, when we reviewed these movies, like we sat down and talked about Terminator 2 for like 2 hours, and it was a really in-depth conversation. And hell, I remember we were talking about Terminator 3 or 4, we started thinking of new things to say about Terminator 2 And we're like, this is why Terminator 2 is so great, because there's all these layers to it.
Yeah. And, Cameron has a new movie out right now, Avatar 2, The Way of Water.
The Way of Waller. What, Amanda Waller from DC Comics is in that? I didn't realise.
Who's that?
She's the scary woman who runs the Suicide Squad.
Oh, I hate that movie. I hated that character. No,
Well,
she's definitely not in. But, like, even that, going to see that movie and then us talking about it was just like, God, we just miss this type of action, right? Like, these cameras just so good at filming action in a way that you understand what's going on. It's clear. Nothing's like, the camera's not shaking all the time. Everything's focused and you're just taking it all in. And it's, obviously this movie like changed action films forever.
Oh yeah, like everything with like Arnold like, chasing in the bike to try and get to John Connor whilst he's been chased in a big tanker or whatever it is. A big truck with a T-1000 down the LA River, like all that stuff is excellent. And it's the geography, you understand where they are and that he's trying to get to him. There's a clear goal. Like everything has a function. It's not just like messy action where there's a fight going on forever and like you can't really like you can remember every distinct part of that action sequence because it's laid out. There's a clear character A is trying to get to character B. Here's the obstacles in the way. Like everything flows and makes sense. All of his action is like that. Everything has a constant focus and purpose at all times. And then you watch the end of Aquaman 2 and it's like, oh, there's just lots of CGI things like fighting and I don't understand like the motivations. I don't really understand.
I watched it, but I can't remember what happened in that movie.
That's just, for whatever reason, that's become my favorite like recent like Hollywood movie like take the piss out of when it comes to like bad action because it's just this big mess of CG.
I think it was like it is the perfect example though, right? Because it's just this huge blockbuster film that it's a comic book movie and it's like it's everything that's trending right now in the wrong direction. And
it's probably especially perfect now that Way of the Water's come out and it's like here's how you do absurd budget water action and effects. So all of a sudden Aquaman, like I just see James Wan sweating in a corner somewhere, like, oh no.
Good luck.
he's
Go
like,
back
no,
to your ghost movies.
I'm not the one true James. I thought I was the one true James, but I am not. All right.
Worthy.
Number 3 is The Truman Show, which
probably pretty high for a lot of people, right? Like,
I think some people don't necessarily think of this as science fiction, but it absolutely is. Like, especially in the way that it's using its premise to talk about, society and themes, and this character who is under this microscope by everyone else, and it explores a lot of things. It explores like people as a property of intellectual property and the way that he's like owned by this TV company and how he's exploited. And again, this idea that he deserves freedom like anyone else. Like, it's such a science fiction film. It's just not spaceships. It's not time travel and flashy things, but it is science fiction.
And it's Peter Weir who, like Cameron, is up there with one of the best. I think he just nails the feeling of like everything being important and real. I don't really know how else to explain it. Like there's something about his films that feels special to me, and I think that the character of Truman, even though it's played by somebody who's traditionally you just want to laugh at, is very tragic when you watch. It's I think I've mentioned this before in our reviews and other times we talk about it, but like when we watched it, it wasn't just a movie that like was ahead of its time, but like it's aged so well. Like it seems to get better with age, and as technology gets smarter and cameras are on everything, people like younger generations are just like, I can be a celebrity by making myself Truman.
It's just gotten more relevant as time has went on, and it predicted so many like little things. Even though its core concept is this big dome that's a fake world that he lives in. Yeah, that part's the outrageous part. But there's so many little things in that concept that they do that do feel like they've predicted things very accurately. And Ed Harris is great as the guy who runs the show. I love the way that we all view it from his, Truman's perspective, and there's that really pivotal, and we talked about it a lot in the review, but there's a really pivotal point where it starts to show the other side of the world, where you see like the control room in the moon and them running the show, and you literally hear him shouting directions and like what the actor should try and say to like get Truman to change his mind.
It's a little bit meta in that way too, where it's like, okay, cue the music because the emotions are coming in, and you got to manipulate the audience here.
So there's a lot of meta, there's a lot of satire in there. There's a lot of really thoughtful science fiction ideas. But Truman is this very likable character who you want to see break out of his prison that he's effectively in. And that's a really strong narrative on its own. But then there's all the meta things that if you're trying to like think about it and study all the themes and all the little nuances that are going into it, there's a lot of stuff to talk about. And there's some of it's really in your face and funny, like the product placement. One of my favorite gifts to share to people is that moment where Truman, like the wife, like says something about the coffee beans that she's holding, and he just sort of goes, "Who are you talking to?" like I love that gif because I use it all the time because it's perfect to just So there's just so many like moments that are really funny, but not in the way. I think when I was a kid and I saw it, and I'm sure I said this in the review, but when I was a kid and I saw it, I'm sure I was disappointed in it because I was expecting like Ace Ventura 3 or whatever, and it's not that. It's a very different film, but I actually think it's funnier than those movies because it's like everything like is funny because there's thought behind it. Like when he's sitting in the travel agents and there's all these posters that are designed to try and make him not want to travel. So it's like a plane getting struck by lightning and just all these little details in the scene. Like,
yeah, they've made him afraid of water. Yeah. Because he's on an island.
Truman Show is fantastic. Like, it is an excellent film.
It was definitely a really great revisit for that.
Oh, this was your total recall. This was where you went back and went, oh wait, this is even better than I thought.
Well, I mean, I'm a few years older than you, and I think this came out at a time where we're at, where that difference was quite a lot. Because I think I was like 12. And you would have been like 8 or something.
Yes.
I think that's about right. So, so I think I'm already at the point where I can just like I appreciate more drama in films than maybe you're like, but like he's not talking with his butt.
Yeah. I was just a bit too young. I had like a free
Truman pin that I wore to middle school all the time. So I definitely liked the movie a lot when I saw it, but I appreciate it way more now.
Because it was the year after this that Man in the Moon came out, and it was Truman Show and Man in the Moon that I saw again in my late teens or whatever, and went, wait a minute, these two movies are really good. It's just at the time I was like too young and was expecting a Jim Carrey comedy, and now I prefer those two movies to any of the comedies that he did.
Well, I mean, talking with your butt is a classic also, like, and nothing is funnier than Ace Ventura 2. When nature calls, when he has to be birthed out of that mechanical rhino in front of that family.
Yeah, well, the first Ace Ventura is aged quite badly. There's a lot of really dated things in it.
Yeah, like, definitely. Especially with the trans stuff.
Yeah, it's really aged. The second one in turns actually held up better because it doesn't have, I mean, I'm sure there's some stuff in it that maybe is dated a bit, but like nothing on the level of the trans stuff in the first one.
Oh, I was always a huge fan of the second movie over the first one. I mean, the movie starts with him eating bat poop over all the time.
Yeah, what's funny is I saw Ace Ventura When Nature Calls like at least a decade before I saw Cliffhanger, which the entire opening is what it's like parodying. Yeah. But whatever. So, no, but Truman Show is excellent. The Truman Show, I cannot recommend it enough. Top to bottom, it is a fantastic film.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Number 2, and the movie that made me a movie fan, like fan. Jurassic Park. You knew it was going to be here, right? Like,
yeah, the first movie I ever saw in a theater. This was my first cinema trip. Was Jurassic Park.
Very cool.
I was 4 years old.
Took me to Back to the Future when she just had me, I think. So she's like, I have a newborn, but I'm not missing it. I get my movie love from my mom.
Yes. I feel like some people in the cinema might have not been pleased with your mother's for that choice.
I was probably just attached to the boob the whole time. I can't really say that I experienced the movie.
Of course,
but it was delicious. I'm sure.
It doesn't count. That doesn't count as your first movie in the theater because you're probably looking at the screen most of the time. No. So yeah, obviously Jurassic Park is like, it's a seminal film for anyone in our generation for a start.
This is our Star Wars, right? This is the movie that we sat and
I think it is, yeah.
and it's like this changes everything.
I honestly think that's a fair comparison. I think in many ways this is our generation Star Wars, and you know, and when we think of generations, this is the next generation. You know, I would say the generation, because obviously you have to, I mean, it's a little different for everyone year to year. But if you're doing broad generation like bundles, I would say there's a generation where their childhood movie was Star Wars, and then our generation is the generation that their childhood movie was Jurassic Park. You know, maybe you could argue there's, you know, some time in the middle where, like, I don't know, The Goonies or Back to the Future, and that like early to mid 80s is the middle point. But you know, I feel like our generation who were kids in the 90s, Jurassic Park was our big movie. And it doesn't matter who I talk to, I have never met anyone in my own age group that's never seen Jurassic Park and doesn't have some sort of memory or opinion of it. You know, like, it just is.
Yeah, I mean, everybody became it's so easy to be a kid and get like obsessed with dinosaurs, but like being able to see them on screen and be terrified of them and also be in awe of them at the same time because they look so real, you know, and they don't look like the, you know, the whatever Lost Continent version of the stop motion dinosaurs. It's, you know, they look so incredible. They sound amazing. There's kids in the movie too that you can kind of relate to, and like the adults aren't too much to where you're like, this is not about kids anymore when you're watching it.
Oh, but the adults are all great characters. So that's something
they're all great characters.
You appreciate as you get older. Is, you know, Ian Malcolm, Alan Grant, Ellie Sadler, John Hammond, who spares no expense. Hello, John. Hello, John. Hello, John. Like, you know, like he.
The lawyer, even, like, you know.
Yeah, the lawyer
that you enjoy seeing again when you watch it as an adult.
Absolutely. Like, there's a lot more to the characters, and it's one of these things where it feels like it shouldn't be that hard to make a movie where dinosaurs like eat a bunch of people. But how many bad monster movies have we seen where the characters are all just so shit? And it's like, no, there is an art to actually making a group of likable characters who are memorable, who you like being around, even if some of them are kind of more villainous. Like the lawyer is a little villainous, and that he's the soulless one, and you know, kind of gets his comeuppance for being so, but he's still memorable. Like his little slimy lines where he's like, "Oh, we can have a coupon day." You remember that? You remember that line?
Is it auto erotica?
What is it? Oh, I mean, auto erotica. What would that even?
Automated. I think he was good.
Yeah, but I'm just like, what would that actually be if it was a real thing? Like, just a sex bot, I guess. Like.
I love that Hammond's just like not. He's a mature adult. He's just like, he's not going to acknowledge that. He's going to say he's going to act like he said the word that he meant to say, not the word he actually said.
Hammond's going to say on schedule.
Yeah, very nice.
Easy, so easy. But yeah, obviously, John Williams' score is one of the best movie scores of all time. I think it's not. I mean, I do think I prefer his Superman score a bit better. I think it's his best. But I would put Jurassic Park over his Star Wars music. And I know that's controversial to a lot of people, but I think it's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just the wonderment that you get from it. Like, because there's that thing, there's the horror of it, obviously, the Velociraptors, but the wonder of seeing that first, you know, dinosaur. And, you know, that's sort of a bit.
It's emotional even. And it works so well that, like, when it's brought up again in a later sequel, like, it hits really hard, you know, because you hear the music and you see the dinosaur and, you know, something's happening to it. You're like, wow, this is like really, I didn't realize how much this would affect me, but it's because I love that first moment when you first see them so much.
Yeah, we have a T-Rex. Yeah, there's just so many.
Yeah, I mean, just talk about set pieces. Like this movie, of everything on the list has like the most and probably the most incredible and the most memorable.
And just, you know, like the idea that the T-Rex wasn't going to be in the last bit of the movie, and someone said, no, you need to show the T-Rex one more time, so that's why the T-Rex is there. Or even just and I'm sure we said this in the review, but the trivia, that line where Alan Grant says, I think we're at the job, and then Malcolm says, don't you mean extinct? That's there because they had competing like teams try to do the effects, you know, in the early concept stage. And there was a stop motion attempt, which was apparently the most advanced ever. Like, it was like the best stop motion they'd ever looked, was this like test for the T-Rex.
Some late 80s stop motion looks pretty good.
Yeah,
but
so
you can still tell.
But they'd advanced it to like even further, and it was the most advanced ever. And then the CG team showed their T-Rex, and apparently one of the stop motion guys said, "I think we're out of a job. Don't you mean extinct?" And that actually made it into the movie, referring to the archaeologist, which I thought it's a really neat little.
Yeah, I mean, the line is funnier now when you rewatch it.
Yeah. So, excellent. Which leaves just number one, which funnily enough,
did number one. It was number 5.
Which funnily enough, number one has the one in it. Because number one, after some debating, is The Matrix, which is a movie that, despite the fact that it has sequels that get worse every time I have to sit through them, the first Matrix has only gotten better with time, and it is such a tight film that is layered with so many themes that have only gotten more layered as the years have went on, and you realize the directors are speaking from like some personal like ideas and experience on top of all the broad science fiction themes of individuality versus the mass, the free will versus control. All of this stuff is exceptional, and then on top of that you put in incredibly inventive action sequences, cool visuals. The pacing of the movie is immaculate. It's always driving forward and revealing more about what's going on. And the idea of self-belief is perfect, and it ends so perfectly that it never needed a sequel. I wasn't against it having one, but obviously the ones we got, I wish we never did.
Yeah, I think Matrix works the best as a solo film.
It does.
That being said, I don't hate the sequels as much as you do. I think the newest one also is pretty interesting. It's an interesting enough sequel to where like, no, this is good because it's doing something very different and it's also like an analysis of the first movie rather than trying to be like, well, this movie made a lot of money, so let's make another 2 more of them and, make this so that it kind of devalues the first film a little bit, or you can't really analyze it in the same way because they continued the story. But on its own, as a one film with the one at number one, it's an incredible movie. 10 out of 10 if you ask me.
Matrix is fantastic, and it's only gotten better over the years. I loved it when I was young, when I saw it at like 10 years old because of the action and all that. But as I've gotten older, like a lot of good science fiction, like any good movie really, but like a lot science fiction especially, I feel there's a lot of movies that appealed to me as a kid because of the flash and the whiz and the bang. And then as I've gotten older, it's like, no, there's like themes behind this, there's layers. This is why it's a good film beyond that.
As an adult stuck in the system almost. When you watch it, it's very different.
And then one of the most interesting scenes of the whole film is a scene where Cypher is talking about how ignorance is bliss. Is like, I know this stake's not real, but do I give a shit? Like, that even just that scene on its own just lends itself to so much conversation about humans and the choices we make, and willful ignorance. It's so good. So, yeah, Matrix.
Appropriate that it's steak.
Yes. Yes. Tara's saying that as a vegan, but I agree with the sentiment she's getting at. Even though I am not a vegan, mostly just because I am too fussy and can't give up certain things. But
I'll send you some videos. I won't.
But yeah, I mean, ultimately, if science fiction is about trying to like give messages about how we can be better, and most of the good ones are. I mean, I don't know if Predator 2, for example, does, but like most of the good science fiction does. Matrix is up there with its ideas and all the rest of it. So,
do we even mention that Predator 2 has a Busey in it?
Oh, I mentioned Gary Busey. Yes.
Okay, good.
I definitely mentioned Gary Busey.
I thought maybe we overlooked that, and that would have been a huge oversight.
No, you were so quick to try and bring up that I said Bill Paxton first that you never even mentioned that I said Gary Busey second.
You're right.
So that's all. That's what happened there. So we're good. But yes, so that is our combined Atomic Cinema Experiment top 25 sci-fi movies in the 1990. I actually did some research to see like how many other 90s films that we could do on the show, and I got like another like at least 15 plus to do. So there'll be more 90s seasons. Maybe after we do a few 90s seasons, we can do a revisit of this countdown. Or something.
Let's get some more cyberpunk in there.
But we have to, we've done 70s and 90s now, so we do have to do 80s at some point. We have to do 2000s, so on and so on. Or we did 2010s too, because that was like the current thing to do when we did that. But
Maybe we should expand and do more 60s and 50s movies. I mean, there's not like there's none. There's a lot.
Oh, yeah, there's definitely some to do.
The quality versus like what we get, later on, I'd say is, you don't get the heavy hitters with the exception of 2001 and like Planet of the Apes and stuff, or Day the Earth Stood Still. But there's a lot to explore there too, to make a list one day.
Oh, sure. Not an ace list per se, but I think we are going to be doing our top 50 movies of the 2000s in the near future. That won't be a combined list, though. That'll be one where we each do our own list. So that won't be a
long video.
Yeah, that won't be an ace show. It'll probably be a 2-parter. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that'll be a series, right?
Yeah, but like that'll be something that we do in the near future, which won't just be sci-fi. That'll just be in general. But we've done top 50 to 2010s before, so we're going to do top 50 to 2000s. But yeah, that is this list. So by all means, let us know your favorite 90s sci-fi movies in the comments. And like I said, there was a lot of stuff that almost made the list and didn't. So if you're a patron or a YouTube member, you can check out that video, and that is the easiest way to support us, is by joining up and being one of those things. So go to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, or check out the YouTube membership, which is further behind in the bonus content, but I'm trying to catch it up a little bit to get it more contemporary. But the bonus for this will go out as quickly as it does on Patreon, so that both sides get the same thing. But yeah, go and check out all the bonus stuff and support the show. You can also support us by liking, subscribing, dinging the bell for notifications, and all that stuff on YouTube, and commenting. And of course, you can rate the podcast on Apple or wherever you get your podcast from, 5 stars. That helps us out a lot. I'll also take a quick minute just to give you our thanks to our Patreon producers. So thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Bordenau, Christopher Moy, David Brown, Al Tradesman, and Alison M. Fordyce. Thank you to them. But that is the show. We'll be back next week with our most recent Patreon vote winner, which is Metropolis. So we're going old school.
Wow, I've never seen that.
Next episode, yeah. So, and it's really timely because it's literally about to become public domain next week.
Ooh, so we're gonna get all sorts of remakes. Metropolis, Blood and Honey.
January 1st, 2023, Metropolis goes public domain. So,
wow.
Yeah, fun. That said, though, it's worth mentioning, because of the way movies work, any like high quality 4K restorations of it will not be public domain, so you still have to pay for those. But old film prints of it and the IDs of it will be public domain.
Cool.
So just keep that in mind. But there you go. Thank you very much once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer at Salsa.